I'm still searching part 17. As we continue this diatribe, this dialogue, however you want to call it. This is the talking openly about one's doubts, which is a humility that's dearly needed right now. A reviewer of Sam Harris's book, Letter to a Christian Nation, shows passion when he says, Letter to a Christian Nation is a call to everyone of faith to move past their belief systems and progress toward a future world where humanity can solve its most pressing problems using intellectual honesty without having to resort to irrational and superstitious lines of reasoning or lack thereof. Let's think about that term, intellectual honesty. We need to be honest with ourselves and others if true communication is to take place, right? Well, if we hide in delusion using words that we alone have meanings for, that's dangerous situation. I think we should ponder what this intellectual honesty means to us and what we value it should play in our lives. So basically what's going on here is that in spirituality people tend to make up their own meanings for words more often than science, which is more exact. So we make our own meaning, and that's okay, and I'm just going to say that out straight off, saying that it may be dangerous to make up our own meanings for things. Let's think about the term intellectual honesty. We need to be honest with ourselves and others if true communication is to take place. I think we should ponder what this intellectual honesty means to us and what value it should play in our lives. As the reviewer implies, irrational and superstitious lines of reasoning only get us further and further into trouble. We need to interact with each other on clearly defined and honest terms, and I don't think religion lets us do that. And that's the sad truth. It doesn't let us do that. It blocks us from communicating. It blocks us from communicating the real important things. Because I can believe what I want, and it's private, and I don't care what you believe. Pretty much. It's private to me, I'm better than you. That's the kind of thought that's spurred by religion, unfortunately. Here's a quote from a man who reviewed one of Richard Dawkins' books on Amazon.com, who appears to have broken the chains of the far-right illogical thought through the lens of evolutionary theory. He says, quote, I know I was once one of the fundamentalist Christians that rejected it. All I had to go on was the canned and anti-intellectual responses of the religious right. I see many of my former compatriots giving one-star reviews to this book without even reading it, but that is the way it is with the group. I realize that most people that accept it do so without understanding it as well. They just accept it. That was something I could not do. So I did read On Origin of the Species by Darwin and many other books and articles on the subject since then. The real tragedy is that most people, accepting the science or not, never even care to understand the amazing way we developed into so many species out of likely only one. It will take a similar personal paradigm shift to convince people that there may be no God. There may be a point in the future where more and more people realize the logical problems with the personal God theory. I fear that when the rug is pulled out and they realize the delusion they've been under for so many years, living in for so many years, there will be a violent reaction, an emotionally disturbed denial of some kind, that will be harmful to society for a while until the storm is past. All we have to go on are the rules of science, and to assume anything without taking a logical look does not make sense. As I have stated, many of my friends are religious, but I am afraid for them, in a way, because the foundation of reasoning is not there. And if they weren't reasoned into something they cherish so strongly, if they weren't reasoned into this thing they cherish, then it will be quite messy to get them out of there. In a sense, their failure of logic becomes their own self-designed prison, their own poison, like an animal caught in a cage. There are brave writers out there, like Salman Rushdie, who have written about the dangerousness of religious extremes, the extremists and the terrorists, by the way. They have received threats on their lives from the terrorists. Similar threats could also be received by other courageous authors dedicated to intellectual honesty, like Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, and maybe before the late Christopher Hitchens. These are people laying out the case for the dangerous cognitive narrowing that takes place when religion goes too far and endangers the future of our species, literally endangers our species. So what we have to think in terms of what kinds of mindset will help us in the long run, what will help humanity in the long run. That is what to focus everything on. A review of one of Sam Harris's books puts it this way. One can make a fairly long list of countries in which the clergy and the police are the same people, the very same people. And here again, the willingness to kill whole populations of people, failing to share one's own religious beliefs, is founded upon systems of thought, the desire to fulfill the will of Allah, for example, for which there is no proof whatsoever. There's no validity. Harris devotes several pages to quotations from the Quran that demand that the believer murder the unbeliever. And of course, the terrible thing nowadays is that this phenomenon is the mindset of whole cultures, bent upon subjugating or destroying the rest of the world on account, as Harris puts it, of religious ideas that belong on the same shelf with Batman, the Philosopher's Stone, and unicorns. Harris minces no words. We are at war with Islam. It may not serve our immediate foreign policy objectives for our political leaders to openly acknowledge this fact, but it is unambiguously so. He points out that the purveyors of this world view are so narrow as to have no reasoning ability left to them. A very powerful statement. Again, these writers and speakers are taking their lives into a risky area when they criticize religious dogma, when they dare do that. When reading Harris's book, I got the feeling that religion to any degree could be dangerous if irrational ideas could be interpreted as a reason for violent acts.